Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Today's episode, I'm going to point out something to you and to me that is, I suppose, on the surface, very, very obvious. And you think, why are we talking about this, Shane? But I think perhaps it's maybe one of the most important points to remember for perspective. And I suppose the clue is in the title for today's episode, which is Alive, Aware, and Unstoppable, the real advantage in life. And I'm talking to myself, I think, today as much as I'm talking to you. Maybe I'm doing that all the time anyway. But as you're listening to me here today, it's kind of important to realize that we're alive, that you're alive, I'm alive, and that is actually the single most important thing in your life. I think it's just too easy to take for granted that you have life, that you are here. We can get caught up with our deadlines, our sales targets, our emails, our to-do list, all the problems in our business and our personal life, the things we have to get done, the things we want to tick off on our wish list. It can kind of, almost in a way, by getting so busy in our minds with all of that, it kind of blocks. Maybe the most important realization is that we have the gift of life and that we are alive. But because we don't necessarily appreciate it probably as much as maybe we should, it kind of dampens down, I think, a special energy, aliveness. And I think maybe the reason this is coming up in today's episode was I've had a couple of important milestones in my life recently. And it kind of struck me that some people close to me are not here anymore. They're not here for me to talk about these events with them. They're not here to celebrate with them. They're missing out on stuff that maybe sometimes you just take for granted. And I felt maybe a little bit sad about that. But I felt grateful for the fact that I was here. And in a way, it almost gave me an extra incentive to make sure that I'm more here, that I should appreciate it more and bring it in. Now, you might be thinking as you're listening to me, well, what's this now got to do with business or leadership or high performance or success? I actually think everything, because what if your greatest competitive advantage in your life and your business or whatever you do, maybe sport, but what if it isn't your strategy? What if it isn't your skill set or your network or your idea? What if it's your aliveness? And think about what that word means. The vitality, the energy, the upbeatness. Because isn't that everything that you need to succeed and perform in whatever you do? I think most of us, certainly in the Western world, we think that our achievements give us aliveness, or that they will give us aliveness. Okay, I'm going to sell my business for X million. I'm going to become number one in this, number one salesperson. I'm going to get my house. I'm going to get a marriage. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to get my car, the dream car. I'm going to get my life exactly the way that I want. And that's all good, because it's great to create. We are creative beings. And the world tells us that when you get your magic car or whatever it is for you, that you're going to feel more alive. And maybe for an instant, you might feel that. But doesn't it just always fade away? I think if we stop and look at actually what's happening and what actually makes a difference and what actually works, I think the reality is that our aliveness fuels everything else. It fuels our relationships, our leadership, our health, our creativity, our ability to solve problems. So really, on a very simple level, everything important in my life, in your life, only matters because we're alive right now, which is kind of amazing. I think was it Einstein that said you can live your life as if nothing's a miracle, or you can live your life as if everything's a miracle. It's kind of pointing to the same thing. Because what I'm seeing more and more is that a fully alive mind is sharper, it's more creative, it's more magnetic to opportunity, to people, it's just to everything good. And kind of a half alive leader or person, they bleed energy and possibility from themselves and from their team and from their lives. And they very often miss life, not understanding probably fully why. I think like a lot of my work is with people who are what you would consider to be high achievers. And you're probably one listening to this. But when you get into actually watching somebody very closely in their behavior in a given day or week, not what they tell you, but if you can get to watch what their behavior actually is, what you'll see is that a lot of people are kind of living like they're practicing for their grave, just to be straight about it. As in, like, they're working, they're busy, they're producing, but they're not really fully alive. Only a few days ago, I met somebody on the street and I was just looking at this beautiful car. It was a brand new high-end Porsche, like absolutely like a beautiful car, high six figures, I would say, as a car. And I was admiring it when the owner came back and I was talking to the guy. But honest to God, you know, there was no sense of enjoyment or aliveness at all from the guy. I don't know what was going on now in his life, but you'd think, most people would think, oh, if I had that car now, I'd be so happy, I'd be so buzzy, I'd be so alive, I'd be enjoy talking about it. No, I was just like, yeah, whatever. Um, and I think, none of us like to think that we can be like that, but I've certainly been like that with certain things in my life at certain times. I know a lot of other people that I work with that I know can be like that. And I think the external signs are important to watch. Be always rushing. There's no presence or attention in meetings. You're distracted. Conversations feel transactional. Yeah, let's just get this done so I get on to the next thing. And even your close relationships, personal relationships, they lack spark. They lack that energy, even that sense of intimacy, that connection. And if you go looking for the internal signs, I think some of the giveaways are chronic tension, diminished joy, like my friend with the brand new high-end car, or kind of just being on autopilot. You're just kind of numb, or maybe you just feel stuck all the time. So they're kind of some of the, I think, the indicators that you need to look out for here. And I think what I'm talking about actually, sometimes you will go through phases where you feel incredibly alive, but it's to look to what's the underlying dynamic. And maybe sometimes realizing that, hang on, I need to tell my mind to stop worrying and stewing on these other things, stop getting caught up with thoughts that have no value, that are diminishing my aliveness. Because for me personally, my number one metric for me is my sense of aliveness. And if it's off, I need to kind of go inside and tweak some things. I had a CEO client who, in their words, had everything, but admitted to me that they felt like they weren't really living. They were just kind of running almost on empty. But after learning to check in with their own state of being, their own state of aliveness daily, they started to get a feel for themselves about how to tweak it up. Now, part of that is an awareness of understanding your mind, your inner world, your thinking. And certainly for me, I think a major turning point would have been post my breakdown back in my mid-20s, where I realized, oh, I can work hard, but I can still stay fully alive. Now, it probably took many years after that before the penny really fully dropped. And I'm still learning, because some days, maybe you'd say, honestly, it's better than others. But what I am aware of is that aliveness brings this very unique energy into your tank, very unique energy. And it brings with it, this enjoyment, but this also the ability to see more clearly, to have more clarity, to think better things, to take hits when they come, to adapt, to be more resilient. It's definitely, from my perspective, the key variable of the future. And I certainly know that when my first exposures maybe to some of this, and it piqued my interest in the inner world, the inner game, was post that breakdown. And I realized, wow, I had actually disconnected from that energy, from that aliveness. I'd really disconnected from myself. And I remember exploring, in the first few years afterwards, getting very intensely obsessed with doing different courses and seminars and meditation retreats, all that kind of stuff. This was back in the late 90s. But I remember being abroad somewhere sunny, but I just remember this incredible sense of aliveness. I was swimming in the sea. The water was very pleasant. I was relaxed. My mind was very, very present, very relaxed. My life, I had nothing in terms of accomplishments or achievements or even material stuff, nothing compared to what I have now. And I was striving to create and achieve all those different things. But I just remember this sense of gratitude and aliveness. And it's almost like electricity running through my arms and a real connection with myself, maybe for the first time ever in my life. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is what you're working for, which at the time almost was confusing because I go, hang on, I thought I was supposed to get achievements and da, 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 and then I would feel that. And then you realize, oh, it's actually available to you right now, no matter what your circumstances are, which might sound very as a bold claim, but actually from my experience is true. And what if it is true? Why not explore that as a potential? Because your aliveness is your real advantage, because without it, your thinking is duller. Your decisions in a business context get more risk averse, and your relationships are surface level. They just don't go as deep. You don't connect as much. And again, you probably know people like this, and maybe you're this person listening, but a joyful, fully alive person actually is more daring, and they connect more deeply with other people. They're good to be around, and they also recover faster from setbacks. They are definitely way more resilient. They're not worn out. And I think one of the key points before we close out with some questions is just to realize how much your thinking is contaminating your inner world. Really, it's a lack of awareness of how much we're caught up with this unhelpful, almost poisonous thinking, because usually they're on the problems that we're stewing on. Sometimes over catastrophizing, overthinking. And sometimes you just need a perspective shift. It's a bit like, sometimes if you go to a funeral, everybody there's like, oh my God, wow, life is so precious, and boom, all of a sudden sometimes somebody just disappears. Death is the ultimate reality check. And it's often struck me that people at a funeral, somebody who's died before they probably should have had or anybody expected, which can happen, you kind of realize, wow, life is precious, and boom, it can just be very final when somebody disappears. And that's a tremendous perspective shift for people at a funeral. But I've often had discussions with people who say, yeah, but a few days later, everybody forgets because they all get back busy again in their minds, in their thinking. So there is something universally true for everybody, I think, of what I'm saying today. So some questions for you. When was the last time you noticed that you were alive and you really felt it? And what about your daily life? Are you half alive? Are you fully alive? Where are you? And imagine if your aliveness was at 100%. What would change for you in your relationships, in your leadership, in your enjoyment, in your creativity? Just think about that for a second, because that might point to the value of what I'm talking about. Because I think success is not just about what you do, but increasingly, I think people are starting to realize that it's the state you're in while you're doing whatever you're doing, personal, business, or sport. So here's a practical one for you. Regardless of wherever you're at in terms of your percentage of aliveness, what's one thing you can do in the next hour to feel more alive? And whatever that is, whatever comes to mind, just do it. It's probably something very simple. If you know me well, you know that I like to write. I've written a couple of books. But I've also written a couple of plays. And actually, my most recent play was done a few years ago called The Waiting Room. It's a full-length comedy. But it's about a guy called Mick, and he at the start of the play was somebody who was kind of, I suppose, not really fully alive, very much disconnected from himself. But as the play evolves, he realizes, oh, I need to make some changes. And I'm not going to get into the story of it. If you're in kind of my closer community, you might have even have seen it or watched a screening of it there a couple of years ago. But the very last line of the play is kind of what the whole play is about. And he's realizing he's getting a second chance basically to live. I don't want to give away any of the story, but the last line is his dad saying to him, make it count. Make it count. And I'll close out with that on today's episode, that for the next week, every time you check the time on your watch or a clock, your phone, See, can you just use that as a trigger to pause for 1 second, take a breath, and just notice that I'm still alive. So let's make it count. That's it for this week. Thanks for being here. Ciao for now.